Hi everybody, welcome to How to Find Vulnerabilities in Your Office 5 Tenant Before Attackers Do. I'm Guillaume Boisvert, Director of Product Innovation at the Sherweb and also responsible for our security products. Thanks for coming. Let me get my clicking going. So today's webinar is really centered around the interesting attacks that we've seen on Office 365 since we've started doing Office Protect, and also since we are a very large reseller of Office 365, we are privileged to some information about. So basically, our partners share with us what's been happening with their tenant, or we see it online, or different things. And I thought it was, we've added a new thing to Office Protect in regards to that. And I thought this was a very good venue to share some of that information. So what we'll do today is we'll go through some practical examples of attacks that we've seen on Office 365. I always find that's a very desirable thing to do. Like, people like to have practical examples, either for themselves just to realize what's been going on, but also to use with their customers so that they can share that information. And I don't mean to scare them, but to definitely give them a little bit of consciousness about what's been going on around Office 365 and the fact that they can be target. Everybody can. We'll talk about how comes those vulnerabilities are there if they're known, which always a little bit surprising to people. We'll talk about what is Office Protect. We'll talk about the new feature, which is the vulnerability assessment report. We'll talk about suggested next steps for you, and then do a Q&A. So speaking of the Q&A, in the webinar software that you're currently looking at, there is a box to put in questions. Put them in as soon as you have the questions. We'll either answer them as we go or keep them for the end. If for some reason we don't get to your question, don't worry. We do contact people that have left questions. We contact them outside the webinar, still have that conversation. I see a fair amount of people have joined the webinar. I'm very happy about that. That's good. I recognize some of the names. Glad you're here. Let's get started. Oh, small last item. This webinar is being recorded. If you have to leave any part of it, don't worry. You'll get the link in usually 24 to 48 hours. Yeah. 48 hours. Looking at my lovely assistant to make sure that I don't say anything crazy. So let's get going. So what's been happening? Here's a few examples. The first one I used is one that's not really all that relatable to our typical clients. And don't worry, we get a lot more relatable as we go. Most of the time, I can't share a lot of the identifiable information about the companies and institutions and things like that. That information is usually very privileged. People are usually closed off about having security issue, and you can understand why. In this particular case, it was a large company, very large. And basically what happened was a combination of things, but that is probably the scariest one. At its core, it's the good old CEO scam, which basically is, hey, I'd like you to do something for me. And then the attacker gets you to send some money somewhere. And you'll guessed it, that somewhere is not somewhere correct. But this one was particularly fancy. The attackers really invested the time to understand the company they were targeting and how they function and everything. So in this particular case, they hacked an account, an Office 365 account, and they did it using a compromised file. Once they had control of the account, they started just snooping. So they just took in information, that's it, didn't do anything, understood what was going on. What happened next is kind of scary. So they identified a real vendor of that company, somebody they had to pay invoices to regularly. And then they identified a large invoice that had to be paid that hadn't been paid yet. And then they went into action. So they created inbox rules or mail flow rules. I think they were inbox rules in this particular case, to make sure that emails coming from all the parties involved in the scam didn't get to the actual recipients. What they did in their case, they diverted them to another folder. I think it was archives. And then they started sending emails. And basically what they did is they got a domain that looked like the vendor, so one letter difference. And they sent an email that said, hey, we have new, are you going to pay this invoice that's been waiting? And then that's it. And then the conversation sort of got started. And then in the next step, they said, we have new bank details for you to send that payment. Here are the new bank details. And they had hacked the destination of that. So they could see everything that the person was doing. They already had redirected emails that were being sent to people in IT and things like that. So it was very, very well orchestrated, sorry. They did the transfer, the large company did the transfer. It didn't work. There was a problem with the bank details, because obviously when you're a big scammer, sometimes you have a problem with your bank. They sent new bank details, and those one worked. I'm not going to get into amounts and things like that, but let me tell you, it was significant. Like, it was a very, very, very valuable payday for the attacker. And that's why these type of things are worth it to them. So in this case, there was no Office Protect to be found, which honestly, Office Protect was not really the tool for a large company. Large, when I say large, I mean like tens of thousands of employees. You got to do a lot more. You should use a lot more of the Office 365 tools, other third-party products. There's a lot you can do. But even then, in this particular case, Office Protect would have detected the sign-in from an authorized country, because the attacker that hacked was in a foreign country where the company had no presence. And we would have detected the email forwarding rules as well. So even in this scenario of a very, very elaborate attack, Office Protect would have done its job and detected it a lot, like way before the actual money transfer took place. So that's one example. By the way, if you guys have examples of other attacks, whether Office Protect did anything or not, they're not related, do put them in the Q&A section or the comment section if you'd like to share. I think everybody here loves to hear practical examples of what's going on out there, much better than theory and vendor speak. Here's another example. This one I can name the partner. It's a partner of ours called Authen-TIC that do a really good job here in Quebec. They are a partner of Sherweb for a long time, and they've now been using Office Protect. They were brought into a license-only deal of Office 365. So basically the end client, which I'm not going to name, asked them to sell or to buy Office 365 from them, and that's it. Since Office Protect is part of our base plans to get started, it activated itself. And it did its job, basically. It looked at different things, and it detected that there was an existing inbox rule. So that sent an alert to the partner. Partner contacted the client. Client was in shock that this was already there. And basically, after we sort of put all the pieces together, well, the partner put all the pieces together. I did nothing. What they saw was that there was a rule in place for this particular account that had been hacked. And the rule was any email from that client's financial institution would be forwarded to the attacker to a Gmail address and then deleted. So what would happen there is that the client would not get the email from their financial institution. In and of itself, not a huge problem. Like, if you don't get your emails, you don't get your emails. That doesn't mean anything. But here's the fun part. That particular financial institution, and anybody in Quebec and probably all of Canada is aware of what I'm going to say, they had a major, major, major information breach in the last year. And basically the conclusion of that breach was that every client information was exfiltrated and sold. So if you put those two things together, basically, I have all your personal information. I'm about to do something with that information. I'm going to try to, I don't know, get a credit card, transfer money out of your account, open lines of credits, anything like that. Most likely, those things will generate email from your financial institution, right? That will warn you, hey, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to do that? Or did you know that you're, I don't know, getting 8 new credit cards? But now they have also control of your email, and they can basically make sure you're not aware of that. They get the email, they say, yes, that's fine, I do want those 8 credit cards. And now you're in trouble. So that's another bad one. That's actually a much smaller scale, but still very scary. Basically, how Office Protect intervened there is, as soon as they turned it on, we detected that inbox rule. And then the partner could take action. Even nicer thing is, once the partner started talking to the client about this, client was very happy and sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? But basically felt that the partner really did something great. And then it led to conversation on expanding the security services that Authen-TIC was selling to the client. So they started discussing intrusion prevention and endpoint security and all that stuff. So that's one of the selling points of Office Protect. Like one of the reasons that you might be looking at it is to help you to get those security conversation going. It's sad that it takes a security event to get those going, but I think most of you can see that this is probably the best opportunity to get those going. I have a question here, and I just want to touch very briefly. You may have seen from your calendar a Bitdefender reference. That was a bit of a mistake. So when you registered to this webinar on Office 5 vulnerabilities and Office Protect, the confirmation email said Bitdefender. So we fixed that, but you may still have it in your calendar. I won't be talking a lot about Bitdefender. I could if you wanted to. I'm sure we have more webinars coming, but let's stick to the Office 365 vulnerability subject for now. Sorry about the confusion. Moving forward. Here's another good one, a little bit similar to that large company, but it happened to exactly the opposite. It happened to the smallest possible client. So here we have a case, we have a Seattle MSP that's one of our partners, and they were managing a single seat client as a favor. And I'm sure you have those type of clients, your uncle, whatever, they have a small business, you're managing them as a favor, but they're the world's smallest company, quote unquote. They're barely a company. The thing is, it's hard to imagine that they could be part of such an elaborate security incident while being such a small company. Like we generally fairly assume that larger company are part of these. In this case, single seat was hacked into, no Office Protect present, so that stuff went undetected. And then what the attacker did, what we realized afterwards, and what was the story that was told to me by the partner, is that they added a number of domains, created a number of users, gave them licenses, assigned mailbox to them. And then those different fake companies that were created were all part of a big phishing scam. Basically, they were targeting a title escrow company. So basically the company that you use to transfer ownership of large things like land and houses and things like that. It's a company that holds all that stuff. So basically they were using that big setup where they were imitating being the party that was buying, the party that was selling. They were all over the place and all made it for a very, very credible conversation that was going between different parties. Like if you see a conversation between 2 or 3 parties and everybody makes sense and everybody's legit, why would you assume that all those parties are controlled by an attacker? It's very, very hard to just say, well, I'm going to use common sense and I'll be okay. Maybe, maybe not. This is a good example. What happened is then the bill was what gave it away. So when the one seat guy saw his Office 365 bill, there was a bit of a few questions being asked. And then they called in their friend, the MSP. MSP turned on Office Protect. And as soon as they did that, it started seeing things like user created, license assigned, and other administrative actions that were taken on those quote unquote invisible domains. They were invisible in the sense they were hidden. But the interesting bit about this one is the attackers were taking action in a domain that had nothing to do with the company's domain. So there was absolutely no effect on the company's domain. So I think that's a pretty interesting bit about it. Let me just see the questions that we have, if I have anything. Well, since I'm doing this webinar single-handed, I'm going to keep those to the end. Let's keep moving. Don't hesitate if you have questions about the different hacks and everything. As long as you're not asking me which company was hacked, I'll do my best to answer. I have one last one. And this one is particularly funny and also particularly anonymous. I don't want to say who it was. One of our competitors sent me an email. So I'd probably discuss with them before something. We talk to our competitors all the time. It's a generally very friendly industry. But I got an email from them that said, and it was literally from them. It wasn't an attempt. Well, so it was a good attempt at phishing because it literally came from them. So from my understanding, what I can see in the different bits and my knowledge of that type of thing, they were hacked. So their Office 365 was hacked. The person that hacked their Office 365 put a file in their OneDrive and then used their email to share that file that was in OneDrive. And the content of the email basically said, here's the quote that was prepared for you. Please have a look and let me know what you think. And it really comes from the person's email. And it's really a file in their OneDrive. And that file makes sense. And they use the signature of the client. I've seen that attack a few times now, and they always use your signature, like proper signature. So that's really, really good, makes the email look good. There were a few things that could have kind of stood out, like the signature was there more than one time. There was a few mistakes in the text, but still, it came from the right person. I had seen this attack before, so I didn't click, and also I wasn't expecting our competitor to send me quotes, so I didn't touch it. Also, I literally had seen that one link, OneDrive link in an email before in another attack, so I'm kind of hyper aware of that stuff. I don't want to click anything. So I sent them an email and I said, hey, I think you've been hacked. Like, you might want to look into that. And then a couple of days later, I got an email saying, hey, if you got an email from us, sorry about that. Didn't come from us. All your stuff is safe, blah, blah, blah. Generally, those attacks, when I've seen them in the past, I didn't click the link in this case, but I've seen them in the past and detonated those links. They are usually phishing attacks that are trying to get your Office 365 credentials. So you click the OneDrive link. It's a legit OneDrive link. And then when you get to it, it will be a fake page trying to get your credentials. But since it's a real link, how would you know? Like, those are tough, man. Those are really, like, people often judge if you get hacked and they're like, oh, really? You click on that file and that's really stupid. I don't judge. It's the attackers are getting fancier and fancier and better. How would Office Protect have helped? So obviously, for obvious reason, Office Protect was not used by our competitor. But it would have detected most likely the sign in from authorized country because there's very little domestic hacking. There is plenty, but not the majority. And then the OneDrive anonymous file sharing would have been detected as well because we do intervene on OneDrive as well. You have to think about more than just the security issue, like getting your money stolen and things like that is the obvious. But take in this case, their reputation is damaged forever. Like, do you want to do business with an IT company that tried to phish you? Like, that's tough. Like, that's a tough spot to be in. That's why I let them know. That's why I don't name them here. I don't judge. I try to help. So this, okay. So those are the examples that I wanted to share of different attacks that we've seen where Office Protect could have helped or did actually help. One of the questions I get is, security for Office 365 seems superfluous. Isn't it the cloud? Isn't it already secure? And that's fair. Office 365 doesn't have a lot of vulnerabilities. They found some, they get fixed very quickly. I have to say that Microsoft does a great job when it comes to security in this day and age. Like, they used to have a real problem with it, but I think they evolve very quickly, and their track record is actually very good nowadays, especially with their cloud services. There hasn't been like generalized Office 365 flaws like, hey, you can get everybody's email or something like that. I've never heard anything like that. Usually what happens is not so much that Office 365 has a problem, is that you as a customer or as a business have a problem. So they hacked an account, not accounts in general. And they're doing things all the time to improve on that. But one thing to keep in mind is security is not a one size fit all. You can't say, why don't they turn on security? Like, how come Office 5 doesn't have security? It has plenty of security. But the thing is, it's hard for Microsoft to say, I'm going to build security out exactly for you. They do best practices. They target their most popular market, which is larger enterprise. They try to help the SMB. They try to help everybody. They try to help the home customer. They try to help everyone. And they do. They help. But you still have to go in and sort of tailor it to yourself. It can't be expected for Microsoft to do everything right for everybody. Which comes with the second point, which is Microsoft has an expectation that you will invest time and technical mastery into their security. Security is hard. Security is generally hard. It is generally complex. You have to do the legwork, generally. And for something like Office 365, or for someone like Microsoft, their goal is more about giving you every possible option, every possible tool, and then you figure it out. And then by figuring it out, you get to the right solution. It makes sense for them because their typical clients has 1,000 employee or 5,000 employee, and then part of those employees is somebody that knows IT and knows IT security. But if you look at our customers, we look at our partners, you look at your customers, is that fair? Is that a fair assessment? I've asked large group of our partners whether they had somebody dedicated to security, like if they had somebody certified in some kind of security, and the answer is generally low, or no. It's too expensive, they're hard to find, like they don't have a full-time job within an MSP. It makes no sense. So you have to find ways that are simpler. I'll show this. I like to show this slide. This is Microsoft Security Reference Architecture, and it covers more than Office 365, to be fair. But I mean, this isn't a joke. Like, this is the slide that they provide for you to understand how their security works just as a general concept. Doesn't go into detail of anything. It's a good slide. Like, there's a lot of information in there. I do recommend it. Like, if you mouse over a thing, it will give you information, additional information, usually. Yeah. So the original version, which is what I recommend you get, URLs are in here, will give you additional information. But it's just, think about it. The assumption is you would have to master this to have a good idea of the overall picture of security for Microsoft, on-premise, Azure, and Office 365. It's too much. It is too much. Where do you get started? It is good that they have all those things. They need all those things. People would not tolerate it if they didn't. But for me and you, where do you get started? How do you get started? So the last assumption is a lot of that security comes at a price in Office 365. If you want something like EMS E3, which honestly, I wish everybody would get. And if everybody would get EMS E3, I don't know that I would have done Office Protect. It's $8 per user, US. So think about it. Your typical client, what do they buy? Business Premium, Exchange Online Plan 1. Let's take Business Premium. It's a $12 SKU roughly. I sell you a $12 SKU. I convince you, like you or your clients already convinced, they need Office, they need the tools and everything. Great. They'll have the online presence. They'll have the online tools. Great. And then I say, well, I'd like to give you better security. I'd like to do a few more things with security, make sure you're safe. Like, you don't know what's out there. I need the MSE3 to do that. It's 80% increase on your monthly price. 80%. Like, I understand Microsoft when they say there's a lot of value in the MSE3. They're right. They are correct. It is a good product. But an 80% price jump, it's often not even a decision. Like, there is no decision, there is no conversation. It's just can't afford it. That's the end of that. So that's a problem. And then I give you the other example. I really like Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 2 because it has a lot of things like conditional access. Conditional access is really nice, by the way, if you want to look into it. But again, it's an $8 SKU. Like, so unless you can get your clients to take E5, E5 has a ton of value, or to take one of those add-ons, you kind of have to get started somewhere. And we felt that's where Office Protect kind of came in. And see the nice segue here? Let's talk for a few minutes about Office Protect. I'll give you some of the base information. I'm hoping that most of the people here are aware of Office Protect, but I think it's only good to get started at the beginning. So what is it? Basically, what we've done is we've built an online service. What it does is you add your tenant, your Office 365 tenant to it, and it will help you to put in place best practice security settings. It will do 24/7 monitoring for you without a big time investment. And it will simplify your managed security offering, which is the whole idea. We want you to improve your managed security offering. It will also allow you to share a lot of information with your customer, give you some visibility. The value to our partners, what we've been reported by partners, really to improve the tenant security. First thing, it has to improve security. If it doesn't do that, it doesn't do anything. It expands your security offering, so you can say, hey, I do all those things for Office 365. Like, I'm well versed in the security of Office 365, and I'm moderate and everything. And then it helps you to increase your visibility to your client. I've said it many times. The short version is, if you're a great managed service provider who sells managed services, not break fix, the better you do your job, the less your customers know you're doing it well. And that's a vicious circle. Like, you don't want stuff to break so just you can show your face and say, hey, I'm doing work. So with something like Office Protect, you can show that you're taking care of things, you're on top of things. So first thing that it does, best practice security settings, It helps you. It's not adding security settings to Office 5. It just makes them easier to use, easier to maintain. So here's a quick list. I don't think I'll go through everything that it does. You have a pretty good view here. We'll talk about how you can get into Office Protect very, very easily without any kind of cost or anything associated with it. So I think the proof is in the pudding. We're going to get you to try it, and you'll see I'm very convincing. I could give you an example of something we had. It was a recommendation by one of our partners. We love partner feedback when it comes to Office Protect. Office Protect was developed 100% internally at Sherweb and still very actively being developed. Hi team, that's on the webinar. One of the last settings that we added is detection of attachments. I'll say that 5 times quickly. Detection of attachments containing URLs. So the feedback from the partner was, I use all the tools and everything for phishing prevention and everything, but the thing that all those tools are having trouble catching is a legit attachment. So the attachment itself doesn't have any security flaw or anything. A legit email, nothing special in the email, not even a link to something bad, like nothing, but a link to something bad that is in an attachment that's in the email. So basically what we do for you here is we help you, we automated the creation of the rule in Exchange that will detect that, and that will put in the comment at the top of the email that says, hey, there's an attachment with a link in it, be careful. You can customize the message that it gives to your customer. So you can say, be careful. And if you don't know, contact me, and you could put your contact information. So that's one of the many ways that Office Protect will help you to have visibility at your customer. The other thing that we do is, once your settings are good and implemented, you probably won't go back and change them every 5 minutes. We have all the templating stuff, and you can make quick change amongst all your tenants and everything. Very nice features. I encourage you to check it out. The real value ongoing is the monitoring and the alerts. So what we've done is we hook up to every source of information that we can in Office 365, and we monitor those. And we've created a list of very simple events that should really have an impact on security. So Microsoft generates a torrent of event, like it is thousands and thousands. I'll give you an example. When you look at your vulnerability assessment, because you will get it and you'll look at it, it will tell you how many events we parsed from Microsoft in the last month. And I think the last time I checked, we were up to 95 million in the last 30 days. We read from these sources of information 95 million events from Microsoft for our tenants. And this is a product we launched a year ago. So we have many tenants, but not that many, 95 million events. So think about it. Do you want to be the one that goes in and check those events one by one to figure out what's suspicious, what's problematic, what's okay? You could. I'm sure technically you could, meaning I'm sure you're capable of it. I'm not implying anybody is not capable. Far from us. But really, the question is more, do you want to spend the time on it? And you probably don't, because your clients are generally smaller companies, or even just for your smaller company clients. If you have big ones, great, congratulations. It will work for them too. But for the smaller one, you can invest the time, or you won't make any money with them. So let Office Protect do the work. So here are a few examples of the things that we'll monitor for you, distributed between email and SharePoint and just Office 365 itself. It really covers, this isn't an email security product. It does help with email security, but it's really an Office 365 security product. Office 365 management, really. If you have questions about specific settings and things like that, do put them in the question. I'll get to that in a few minutes. Last thing that it does is the sort of the counterpoint of that monitoring is the reporting. So you want to be able to share that information, consult it, and then share it. We're adding more and more to that, but really now you can go to the reporting and see everything that Office Protect reported. You can either import it to a CSV or something like that, or you can send it via email. When we talk about the monitoring, I went quickly, but we'll send you alerts. So we'll send them as soon as we see them, or we'll send you digests. It is all configurable. It's all for you to decide what is important, not important. We'll create default configuration that we think are useful. We made sure that if you didn't configure Office Protect at all, it should be as useful as it can be. This isn't just here's a whole bunch of controls, you can do things with them. This is really us trying to help you and making it as easy as possible. Give you just one example is when Office Protect starts, one of the things that it does, and one of the very few changes it does to your tenant, is it will enable the logs. So if you don't do anything to an Office 5 tenant, there is no logs. There are no logs, sorry. You have to turn them on. So if you use Office Protect, that's the first thing it will do, and turn on that logs for you. Okay, So what is this new vulnerability assessment that I'm talking about? So specifically, it is something that will be generated every time you add a tenant on Office Protect. And for the people that are partners of Sherweb, you know this will happen by default if you buy one of our Office 5 base plan because it comes with Office Protect for 30 days. So one of the value is you will get this vulnerability assessment. And what it does is very simple, like the rest of Office Protect. We like simple, is it will look at the configuration of the tenant. So how their settings are set. And it will compare it to our best practice recommendation. And it will highlight the difference. Very simple. You can see it on the left. That's the report you're going to get. So we're going to identify the tenant. And we're going to identify which vulnerabilities we identified with the configuration. I give example in the next slide, don't worry. Some of them are, we judge pretty critical. Some of them are just warning. You can address whatever you want. You can address none of them if you want. I wouldn't recommend it. We've created also a vulnerability assessment quick start guide. So it will give you more information about each and every vulnerability and how they tie to Office 365 configurations and how to access them through Office Protect. It will also give you the information on how to get started with Office Protect. And the last step, obviously, sorry, is just to go to the Office Protect platform. So, question I've been asked a number of times since we've been talking about the vulnerability report is what are the most common misconfigurations? What are the most common vulnerabilities that are left to open? So I made two lists here, top 4 critical, top 4 warnings. Top 4 criticals. So emails can be silently sent outside the organization. That is, if you remember the examples, the practical examples that I gave, that is the most common thing now with attacks. There's almost always a component there where they create inbox rules. You can prevent the creation of some of those rules. So there's one type of rule called mail flow transports, and you can prevent the creation of them. So one thing that most people don't need those, or small organizations don't need those specifically, and Office Protect will not help you block all of them. What it will do is block the ones that are forwarding emails from internal to external specifically. If you have exceptions, you can still put them in, but that's definitely something you want to look at. It's pretty critical these days because it's definitely one of the most common things. Not all admin accounts have two-factor authentication, so that's a common one. The biggest influence on account security that we've seen is two-factor. So everybody's familiar with two-factor. You get a code or something that you use to log in on top of your password. So this one is a good conversation piece. I'm aware of two things, and those two things are completely opposite. Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, whatever you want to call it, is the biggest difference maker for security today for account access, like intrusion. So you should definitely enable it. The other thing that I'm aware of from working not in an ivory tower on a cloud somewhere, ironically, but with partner every day and talking to partner and being there and meeting you, is it is also a giant pain in your ass to implement with clients. Customers do not want two-factor authentication. I don't have a magical solution. I really don't. Security is choices, compromises. Perfect security is easy. Don't get Office 365. Disconnect from the internet, close your computers. Perfect security, almost perfect. Get rid of all your employees also, perfect security. Nobody wants that. That's not practical. So you have to make choices. But if you're going to make a choice on multi-factor authentication, get it at least on all your admin account, your global admins and those types. Only technical people should have global admins, and technical people shouldn't resist two-factor authentication. Or if they resist it, they shouldn't resist it too hard. I think that's a minimum to get going. We recommend and Microsoft recommends it a lot. CEO scam phishing email not being flagged. So what Office Protect will do is just warn you that an email is trying to do something funky with trying to impersonate when you're a staff member. Don't even block it. So blocking it is debatable. So false positive, things like that, I get it. But warning is a bare minimum. Some people will warn on every email that comes from an external source. I feel that kind of has the opposite effect. If every email has the warning, then might as well have no email that have a warning. You won't see it after 5 minutes. I think this is a good compromise where you flag the fact that it's coming from external and it's trying to impersonate people, which is very suspicious. And then the last one is kind of funny, dangerous, well, funny to me. Dangerous files are allowed as attachments. So Here's a quiz I always do when I sit down with partners is, by default, which file extensions are blocked by Office 365? Assistant? Any guess? No?
No idea.
No guess here? Any guess remotely? The correct answer, and the shocking answer, is none. No file extension is blocked automatically by Office 365 by default. I don't want to say that it doesn't block any files. It will block files if it sees that there might be issues with it, like intrusion and things like that. But it's not files extension. Like, it's not because it's an exe file that will automatically be blocked, or a bat file, or good old BAS file, or .pif. Do you guys remember the .pifs? Were they ever useful except for viruses? So that's another one of the configuration that we see that remains off by default, which is pretty bad. Okay, a few warnings. I'll cover them. These are more debatable, but still, if I was doing security, I think most of them would be turned on in my case, unless there's a specific reason for that particular client. Users can execute scripts on their email account. So everybody's familiar with PowerShell. PowerShell is the scripting language for the Microsoft environment. It is the scripting language for Office 365 as well. So as a regular user, not an admin, regular user, I can connect remotely to Exchange, like to get my email, for example, and then execute PowerShell commands. That makes no sense, because why would you as a regular user, except if you've been hacked and you're trying to do like batch items, like delete everything or move everything or things like that. So we, in our recommendation, recommend turning it off on regular users, keep it for admins. Interesting tidbit, just because I'm here and you're here and we're all friends. If you turn it off on admins, let's say the admin doesn't need PowerShell for Exchange, turn it off. You will now get errors when you log into Office 365 as an admin, which makes no sense. I don't know why the front end would give you errors because of that feature, but here we are, practically it does. We've seen it, we've done it. We've tried to tell Microsoft, but it hasn't been changed. You will not be contacted if your tenant starts spamming. Yeah, that's a good feature from Microsoft, but it's kind of funny that they don't configure it by default. So there is a feature in Office 365, and we'll be happy to help you find it, even if you don't want Office Protect, where you can configure an email where they'll warn you if one of your emails starts spamming. So not receiving spam, but sending spam. So you have one of your employee, their account starts sending out a whole bunch of emails that look like spam. Microsoft will stop it, like we'll suspend the account, things like that, but it will only let you know if you configure this particular setting. So you should probably do it. International spam is not limited, so we have a few features there that are related to that. So you can block by country of origin of email, and you can block by language also. If it's not in your language, why would you want to receive it? Because it's probably bad. So those two things should probably be configured. They're part of Office 5 configuration. And then links and attachments are not flagged is one that I just talked about. So all good and well. I just gave you a whole bunch of information, maybe scare you a little bit that attacks are constantly going on Office 365. By the way, everybody understand why Office 5 is such a target? It's not because it's unsafe. It's actually very, very safe. It's because so many people use it. If I'm going to find or try security attacks, I will try it on a big platform that has a lot of potential. People put all their critical information, all their business information, they communicate through it. They send each other invoices and things like that through Office 365. So if I hack it, I'm in your business. Next step for you. One, if you're a partner of Sherweb, and from the list and everything, I think most of you are. If you are a partner of Sherweb, then you should already have one of our vulnerability assessment. So check it out. Just go in your inbox, check for vulnerability, or check for your tenant name, and you'll see it. So any tenants that were added in the last month or so will have that security vulnerability assessment already. If you don't have a tenant that has Office Protect with Sherweb, then please do. So you just have to activate one of Sherweb Office 365 plan that includes Office Protect, which is most of them, and then it will activate itself. And the first thing that's going to happen once it's activated, which takes a day or two, or let's say between 4 hours and a couple of days, is you will get that security assessment. And then last but not least, if you're not if you have tenants that are elsewhere, just bring them to Sherweb. You can also, oh, by the way, I want to mention, if you're not a partner of Sherweb and you don't want to move your Office 5 licenses, you were just curious about the information we would share, you can absolutely use Office Protect on any tenant, including ones that have nothing to do with Sherweb. You can use them in any region, in any kind of subscription. If they're enterprise agreement, it all works. So those are the next steps for you. I think we are to the end. So I went a little bit all over the place. I hope everybody learned something. Let me just go see if we have some questions that I'd like to share, and that would make sense for everybody. If you have additional questions, now's the time, put them in. Question about just anything, security of Office 5, security, just security philosophy. I'm happy to share my philosophy. So one question is, I have a client that shares Office 5 accounts, so very small customers. So that's what I said, like a lot of people have small clients. That to me, that makes a lot of sense. And most security software, it's not gonna be very good for that. That's a tough one. That you really have to come at them with security best practices, which their security is terrible if they share all the same account. And I understand their position. Like if they have no other means, they have no other means. I would still activate Office Protect to see if anything weird is going on with that account. But really, you don't want to do that, this shared account, because the problem is always not so much what's happening day to day, but if somebody leaves, you have somebody leaving, you have to reset the password. You have to make sure they didn't create another user, things like that. That account is it a global admin? That opens door to a ton of problems. If they share an account, Office Protect would have been really cheap for them. Like it's per user, it's only $1. I didn't mention that anywhere else. The base price is $1 US, $1.25 Canadian. So there's no reason not to get into it. If they share a few accounts, that really it would have been $2-3 a month. It's hard. If people don't see the value there, I can't help them. Like it's hard. I would show them an example of people that have been abused through Office 365, use a little bit of fear. And if fear doesn't work, then yeah, it's gonna be tough. So I have an example here of a security issue. And that's actually one of the ones that are related. Yeah, that's one of the, that's from our friend. I don't know if they want to be named or not, so I won't name them, but that's the one I gave out as an example. So my friend Errol sent me some things. So one of the questions is, what is the roadmap for Office 5 for Office Protect, sorry, for 2020? That's a good question. So we're going to focus on two things, like two big ticket items. So let's talk about the small ticket items. So we're going to add more features that we set, more features that we monitor. One of the focus is two things in that regard is one, expand a little bit out of just the email stuff. So we have other things already, but a lot of the things that we control are related to email. It kind of makes sense with Sherweb's DNA. But we're going to add more OneDrive and SharePoint and Yammer and everything else. The other thing is the focus also is going to be on some of the premium SKUs of Office 5. So we wanted to make sure that Office Protect was useful for everybody. People that are on Exchange Plane 1 that definitely have a reason to have Office Protect. But now we're going to see if we can add a few of the controls that comes with the two main plans that we're going to focus on is Office 5 ATP and then Microsoft 365 Business. So we're going to try to add some of the controls that are available through those two SKUs into Office Protect. So those are the small ticket items. Bigger ticket items is two things that we're going to focus on. One of them is advanced reporting. I'm going to go quickly on that, but basically it's to give you access to the wealth of information about your tenant that is in Office 365. We didn't want to make everything available in Office Protect, basic Office Protect, because it's too much. Like it's a lot of information, believe me. But we want to give you an easy way to peruse it, get some compliance report, things like that. So it's going to be very easy. You'll be able to schedule those reports, get them sent to you automatically every week, things like that. Will really help with compliance, like I said, but also your visibility at your customer. The other big ticket item is right now, Office Protect is great for the initial setup, the configuration and everything, and it's great for the monitoring. But when there's an incident, it falls a little bit short, or maybe you would like a little bit more help. So we're going to work on investigation and remediation. So investigation is to support you with guided investigation, like, oh, you should look at this, you should look at that, like recommendation, best practices, the ability to note those things, share those investigations within your team, with your customer, again, for visibility, give you the ability to create basically RCAs, root cause analysis of security issues, all that stuff. And then we're going to automate more of the remediation. So right now we tell you, hey, that the correction for this is often in Office 365. We're going to make easy buttons, basically. Hey, you want to suspend an account? Click that button. You want to change your configuration? Click that button. So in 2 minutes, really, those are the two big ticket items on our roadmap that will be coming next for Office Protect, along with a number of improvements. We're making UI improvements all the time. Just next week, you're going to get the ability to search within your tenants, like just to select them. Small things like that make a big difference. Like we're adding them all the time as well. I don't want to spend too much time on Office Protect. The idea was to talk about the vulnerability of Office 5, but yeah. Do I need to change license in Cumulus to activate Office Protect? Don't show Office Protect, but new offers show it. Yeah, so that's a good question. If you've been a partner for a long time and you have clients that are on our traditional Office 365 plans, you can switch without any cost. There is no price difference and without any work. So you just have to go into Cumulus, you remove the old one, you add the new one, they're the same price. You don't have to redo your Office 365 setup at all, and it will activate the add-ons, which is Office Protect for 30 days, 45 days of training on Office 365, which is very useful. This isn't a webinar for that, but getting 45 days, like your end customer getting 45 days of onboarding and training for Office 5 is a recipe for success with Office 5. And then the last thing it will do is it will give you a gig of online backup for all of your clients forever. So yeah, if you have 20 seats, you get 20 gigs forever backups, and you can back up Office 5 or you can back up whatever you want. So yes, to answer your question, you can switch. You do have to switch license, but it's same price, so not any more expensive, and you get a bunch of things. Somebody asked, well, that's somebody internally, so I'll talk to them. So is there a special security that Office 5 applies based on the company size? So that's what I was talking about when I said it's not one size fit all. It doesn't. Like right off the top, it doesn't. Their secure score will give you a little bit more guidance based, well, it will give you scores based on your size, but it really doesn't. I think the assumption is that people will buy a different SKU based on their size. So their E3 doesn't look like their business premium, and they'll put different security in it. It doesn't really change the default configuration of Office 365 though. So not really would be the answer to your question. Yeah, so there's a good question here. David asked, as a CSP, we've been told by Microsoft, all users in our tenant has to have MFA, multi-factor authentication. Office Protect as a user cannot have MFA. So what is the answer? And it says here we can take it offline. This is a problem. So it is currently a problem that we're working on. Office Protect, very transparent. Sherweb, very transparent. We're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and we're working to fix it. Microsoft doesn't give us a mean to perform most of the configuration that we do without using a user. But that user we cannot access with when it has MFA turned on. Well, when it has basic MFA turned on, we cannot because it's a software. So the software cannot receive a code and then put it in and all that. It doesn't work. Generally, what we do there, Microsoft does provide some means for some things regarding that, and there's workarounds. But in this particular case, and we've been, believe me, we've been deep in conversation with Microsoft. It is not fixed yet. They have an issue with that. They're working on a resolution, and we're working with them as well. So as soon as that resolution is there, we will fix it permanently. In the meantime, there are still solutions. If you use a higher SKU of Office 5, which is often the case for our partners because they get access to it mostly for free, you can put an exception for the IP address of Office Protect. So our user would still have MFA. So if somebody tried to access our internal user, like our Office Protect user from anywhere, it would be asked for MFA. It wouldn't work. Well, it wouldn't work. They shouldn't be able to get through it. But then if the call comes from Office Protect itself, it won't ask because of the IP address. So that's the best resolution for now. We've asked Microsoft if the clients, our partners are in breach of the compliance, and they're not. And the reason that you're not is it's only for delegated access that you have to have MFA. So for this stuff, you're still okay. And then for your clients, still okay as well. We have very high security on that user. Everything is fine, but it's really, we've had that question a lot, and we are working towards a final resolution. In the meantime, we do have workarounds. Somebody asked for the price. Like I said, the base price is $1 per user, and it's counted on number of licensed user of Office 365. You get your full partner discount on that, so up to 20%, or yeah, up to 20%. So it gets to be pretty good pricing. What we've seen most of our clients, partners do is they don't even talk about Office Protect. They sell their managed services as including the security aspect and controlling Office 365, and they make their price reflect that. And they just use Office Protect as a tool. So a few people asked for the price. So is it meant to replace something like Proofpoint, like an email security product? It's not. It's really not. If somebody wants like encryption and DLP and those things, advanced phishing prevention and all that, you will have, or they will have a desire to pay for an email security product, and that's great. Office Protect is really there to raise baseline security for Office 365 by using the controls that are there. So make sure it's easy to do, make sure it's all standardized, make sure you don't have to invest a lot of time in monitoring it. But really, if they want the additional features, they have to buy additional features. If you can sell them on EMS E3, please do sell them on EMS E3. The world will be a safer place. A few questions about pricing. Outlook does block Simplify by default. Yes, that's fair. How do you add another global account to this? I don't understand the question. I'll get back to you directly. A lot of questions. I like it. So somebody asked, and this is a very common example. Somebody asked, we have our licenses through the Action Pack because we're a Microsoft partner. Can we apply Office Protect to our Action Pack licenses? Yes, you can. Like I said, it'll work with everything. And even better, I didn't touch on that. Yeah, that's true. Our marketing guy is probably hoping for me to mention this. We offer Office Protect on your partner tenant for a very discounted price. The discount is 100% off. So if you have an Action Pack Office 365 tenant and you want to give it a shot, that is actually the very best way to try it. Get our NFR, get into our NFR program. You'll get 100% off Office Protect forever. And then you can really see how it works and what you can do with it. I'd say that's the best way to get started. The second best way is get it on one of our regular plans for one of your regular tenant and try it for the 30 days, see what it does. Somebody asked, after the 30 days that it's included in those plans, what happened? So that's a good question. The simple answer is nothing happened. So we do not revert any of the changes you made to the security configuration of Office 5. I would never do that. That'd be very bad. So you've gained security configuration, and that's great. Just keep them. They're yours to keep. They're yours to keep. The thing that you will lose is the monitoring. We'll stop monitoring your Office 365 tenant, which makes sense. So it's as simple as that. Okay. So I've gone through most of the questions that I could answer here. Some of them are more specific. I hope you guys had a good time. If you have security event around Office 365 that you'd like to share, I would like to get them. I'm happy to keep it completely anonymous. It's up to you what you want to share and not share. If you want to be using it as an example, not use it as an example. The knowledge that we gain from those very practical example of attacks is invaluable, and we can use it to make Office Protect better. Also, by the way, if you're using Office 365 or Office Protect, even if you're not using Office Protect, and there's things that you do to every tenant, like when I go in, I do this to make it safer or better. If you want to share those, chances are we'll put them in there to our Office Protect backlog, and we'll try to do them and add them and see if we can get it to automate it. Before everybody runs out, there is a short survey at the end. So I've never actually used a survey thing. So Henry, my marketing friend, is it part of this presentation or is it, whoops, no, that's it. So how do they get to the survey? Is it part of the webinar software? So as they exit, it asks them for the survey?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to attend this webinar. And secondly, yes, the survey should automatically activate the moment you exit. So you should see it right away. It will not be sent out by email. We all know how crowded your inbox is. It's just going to pop up right after. And that's it.
Okay, great, terrific, nice and easy. So as mentioned, you already have very easy ways to get into Office Protect to help you with the security of Office 365. You can look at your inbox, probably already have the vulnerability assessment. If you're not a partner of Sherweb, very, very easy to get started. I think the information was on the previous slide as I jump around. So partners at Sherweb, that phone number, find me on LinkedIn. It's all good. Waiting for you to contact us. We'll be happy to help. So thanks everybody for coming. Hope you had a good time.